G'day guys, ZiggyD here, and in case you haven't been following the Path of Exile streams and things like that, and Reddits and the forums, Kripparian has been allowed to stream the alpha content, which means the first half of Act 3 is not allowed to stream the second half. They're keeping some of it secret, but more importantly for a lot of us who are planning builds for open beta, he's been allowed to show us a lot of the changes that are in the alpha, and a lot of the skills and things like that, and how they've been modified, and a lot of the new things that are coming in the alpha, which is really cool for us because if you've been planning some builds for the open beta, there's actually a few significant changes here to a couple of really popular builds that I'm going to go over today to help you guys with planning out your builds for open beta so they aren't destroyed and on day one you realize I can't do what I was planning to do. So, just to note first up, all of these are based on slightly outdated and unofficial patch notes currently on the alpha realm. They all have the possibility of being changed for open beta, but it still gives us a good idea of the direction that the developers are heading with all of these skills that are being modified. So even though things like the numbers might change and certain things might change a little bit, if you're seeing something's getting significant nerfs or buffs in these particular notes that I'm going to go over, then you can expect a similar thing's going to happen when open beta comes, and you want to plan your build accordingly. So first, a general change that affects all players. Phase Run has temporarily been removed and it's being redesigned. Now, I've heard Chris mention on Kripparian stream before and in other places as well that he didn't like the fact that Phase Run was pretty much a must-have for any efficient build. Move speed is just too good to pass up, and although it was initially designed as something that allowed melee characters to get in, do some big burst damage and then quickly get out, but it was being more used by most people as just a simple mobility skill, and pretty much everyone had it in their build. So they didn't really like this. It sort of went against their design philosophy, where they want a lot of variety in skills between builds and things like that. So they're temporarily removing it, and it will probably be coming back in at some point, but that depends on how they decide to redesign it, or maybe they'll replace it with some other skill. So for now, in its place, we have quicksilver flasks, which provide a 40% move speed bonus for 5 seconds. Now, I've seen Kripparian using these on stream, and 3 of them on your bar with good mods, so if you can roll some good mods on them, allows you to permanently chain a 40% move speed increase, which is pretty cool for people that want to go for that. Obviously, there's a big downside to this in that you're taking up 3 of your flask slots to get this 40% move speed. So it seems fairly well balanced, but we'll see how that goes. Now, everyone can use these flasks. Obviously, the amount of flask slots they want to give up to be able to do this will depend on how they want to run their build. So the next lot of changes I'm going to talk about are bow user changes. So pretty much any bow build, there's a lot of changes coming for you. So this is if you're planning either a ranger or some other bow user, then you're going to want to pay attention to a lot of these changes. So the first one is that Rain of Arrows, which is a fairly underused skill, has been buffed with a 20% increased area of effect and a 20% decrease in the delay time. It does a little bit less damage now, and the quality bonus has been changed from attack speed to attack speed from an increased area of effect. It's also now a level 1 gem available from Hillock, whereas before it was available, I think, around level 10 or something like that. Now this is pretty cool. I expect to see a lot more people using Rain of Arrows. I've seen a few Rain of Arrows builds coming up, and it can be an interesting skill when you combine it with things like increased area of effect or concentrated effect, and then things like projectile speed, which decreases the delay even further, and things like that. I think some interesting Rain of Arrow builds might crop up in open beta, so I'm looking forward to that, because it's a cool skill. It looks cool, and the animation's quite cool. So yeah, I'm keen to see some of that happen. Now, here's the big one for a lot of people. Lightning Arrow has been nerfed a lot. Firstly, now it's available from level 10 instead of level 1. That's a minor change. It seems to have switched place with Rain of Arrows. However, here's a bigger one. The chance to shock has been completely removed as a leveling bonus, and leveling the gem now provides a damage bonus instead. It's like a flat or a percentage damage bonus. To counter this change, the mana cost for leveling up the gem, which was pretty exorbitant before, often people wouldn't level Lightning Arrow at all, has been reduced by a fair bit. So I think we'll see people leveling Lightning Arrow just more for that damage bonus without the mana cost being quite so high. So what it looks like Lightning Arrow is going to be is it's going to be a much more spammable skill, and it'll still be a great AoE ability, but I don't think we'll be seeing the one-shot room clears like we were seeing before. Now this kind of combines with the next change as well, which is the change to the support gen chain. That's right, it's being nerfed as well. It now only chains to 2 targets instead of 3. I couldn't find this in the unofficial patch notes, but there's definitely something that I saw on Kripparian's stream in the alpha, so I'm pretty sure it's safe to assume that it's coming. I think it is fairly likely that we will see it, because chain is pretty much seen as a must-have for any projectile build at the moment, and that again goes against Grinding Gear Games' design philosophy of having as much diversity as possible with builds. And pretty much even in the closed beta where there's wipes going on and people are trading their stuff around freely, it's very hard to get a hold of a chain. So I can't imagine trying to get a chain in open beta. So it's still gonna be good, a good ability, but now I think Fork and Pierce might have might see a lot more use, which is really cool, because that simply reducing the effectiveness of chain a little bit means that these 2 other support gems are going to see a lot more, could see a lot more use, and that's cool from a diversity perspective. I know I'm pretty keen to start testing Pierce with a few abilities, especially like Poison Arrow and things like that. I'm keen to try that out, but we'll wait for open beta for that. So the final bow user change is that Ice Shot has been given a 20% reduction in the duration of the ground chill effect. I don't really see Ice Shot used too much, but I think it has a lot of potential. Apparently that duration ground chill effect was a bit too much, so they've reduced that. However, here's the bigger change for it, is that it's been reduced to be a player level 4 skill now, instead of 31 like it was currently. I think it was only a findable skill too. I can't remember if it was a quest reward or not, but I'm pretty sure that if it wasn't before, it is now a quest reward pretty early on in the game. So I think we'll start seeing a lot more Ice Arrow builds, which is cool, because I think Ice and Frost are a cool thing to combine with ranged builds, because they, slowing your opponent so you can more easily kite them and things like that. So that's pretty cool. I'm keen to see Ice Shot used a bit more and explored. So the next category of changes affects dual totem users. That's right, the beasts of high-level farming and safety in hardcore mode. The dual totem users are getting some nerfs. So the dual totem notable passive has been instead changed to a keystone passive, and it now has a drawback. Now, whenever you take the dual totem keystone, your character can no longer deal damage themselves. Obviously, this is a huge change, as it means you can't use any bows, spells, or melee attacks to deal damage. Things like minions and traps and mines will still work, however, so it looks like dual totem users are instead going to be pure summoners instead of dual totem being a skill that pretty much any Templar went for. I kind of like this change overall, because dual totem was clearly very strong, and now it requires a more creative build to be able to use effectively, instead of just being something that every class in the area would go for. So somewhat connected to this change is that Spark has received a very slight nerf. Sparks that have bounced can no longer pierce until 1 second has passed. This just means that people using the pierce support gem with Spark will see slightly fewer hits and shock stacks. As a bit of a buff, however, the effect of the spell has been changed, and it's much less eye bleedy now, which I'm sure your party will appreciate. I think actually that Chris mentioned that he was planning on changing a number of skills that were quite spammable and quite would really fill up the screen and make it hard to see things. So I've seen the new Spark effect, and it is much more subtle than the previous one, just much less bright, and sort of seems to look like it lies lower against the ground, which I think is pretty good, because it was it was an eye bleeder, that one. So that's it for the dual totem users. The main thing is just that keystone change and how that's going to affect your builds. If you're planning a dual totem Templar, then you're really going to have to replan your build out a bit. So now moving on to the final group of changes, and that is Chaos Inoculation builds. Now Chaos Inoculation has been one of the best ways in the game to build your character defensively. It is one of the strongest ways to build your character. It's traditionally pretty gear intensive, like you need to get a very good level of gear before you can take Chaos Inoculation, and that's going to be even more the case now after these changes. So let's get straight into the changes. It's been completely redesigned, basically. The keystone itself now no longer provides a 50% boost in energy shield, and chaos damage is now applied to the energy shield rather than mitigated completely. So those 50% or so energy shield bonuses that have been removed are instead put in an extra cluster off the keystone ability. It's kind of like if you've seen the acrobatics keystone, how it's got passives behind it. So once you take Chaos Inoculation, you really need to have the points saved up to be able to take the bonus energy shields, which total up to a little bit less than 50% if you want your build to be effective. I also think this means that people speccing Chaos Inoculation are going to have to plan out their build a lot more defensively than before, and they're going to have to make sure they get really good gear because they want to keep that energy shield higher to have that extra buffer to protect against the chaos damage that's now going to be coming in, especially in things like chaos maps. There is another passive that I've heard mentioned, but I haven't seen any patch notes on, or haven't seen myself, so I'm not too sure how 100% this is, but it looked like there was a passive put in that allowed life regeneration to instead apply to the energy shield. So this is a good, this will be a good thing for people going chaos builds, Chaos Inoculation builds to go for, because in things like chaos maps that have constant chaos damage, you can never regenerate your energy shield. However, having even just like 1% life regen would probably help you avoid that, will help you keep your energy shield up. So that'd be pretty interesting to see. It sounds like a cool keystone, or a cool notable passive, so I'm keen to see that come in. So there are a lot of other changes in the alpha patch notes, and I'll link to a picture taken from Kripparian's stream of the full list of patch notes. Some of the things I've talked about today are in there, but there's a few things that I've mentioned that I've seen elsewhere besides these patch notes, so it's not complete, and as I mentioned, it's not confirmed. These things will probably change somewhat, and some things might not even end up going into the open beta, but it still gives us a good indication of the things we need to keep in mind for designing our builds, especially if you're a bow user, a dual totem, Templar or something like that, and a Chaos Inoculation build. These are all things you're going to have to think about. So hopefully I've helped some of you guys who are planning out your builds for open beta avoid a shock on day one of open beta. I'm sure we'll see some more official patch notes before then, but this gives you guys a bit of extra time to think. So hopefully that's been helpful. Anyway, that's it for today. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.